What should the NCAA be doing, and what has the NCAA done?
Well, they don't necessarily have to do anything, or it's not about what they should do. I think it was a nice gesture to allow an additional year of eligibility for all spring sport athletes. So, baseball, all the spring sports. And it was something that was floated first by a committee. It was called the NCAA Coordination Committee, which is ironic because nothing's coordinated within the NCAA. But they were the first ones after the cancellation of the NCAA tournament and the cancellation of spring sports to basically say it would be appropriate to extend an additional year of eligibility. And I think that caught a number of people off guard. You heard commentators like us talk about it, but that would be great if we could do that. But there are issues that certainly come with it. It's sort of the equivalent of canceling an airline flight. The airline doesn't just pile everybody onto the next flight. That'd inconvenience would be difficult for a lot of people. And there are some similarities to this. And so what the NCAA did is said, we're extending a year of eligibility if each school decides what it wants to do. If you want to bring your seniors back for an additional year, you can do that. If you don't, that's up to you. You can extend aid to the same level you did before, but you don't have to extend that aid. So it's basically up to the schools. I will tell you guys, I think it's great, but the one thing I'm getting a little tired of is listening to athletic directors sort of whine about, the difficulties and the budgetary issues. Like, scholarships don't cost that much, especially for spring sports, because there just aren't that many of them. Most spring sport athletes pay their own way. And the money from a scholarship, as you know, goes from the athletic department bank account into the school's bank account. So they're not out anything. And this idea that it's so stressful, what's really stressful are the salaries they're paying each other and the amount of jobs that they've created within athletic departments that are now bigger than the Pentagon. So first and foremost, those are their costs that are at issue. I don't really care to hear them whine about, oh my goodness, how difficult it's going to be to have a few athletes come back. That's a low number relative to the outlay they have just in paying each other.
Jay, it's a great point in terms of the money and the budgets, and it is a nice gesture by the NCAA, but where I think it gets tricky, and my daughter is going through this playing lacrosse. Where it gets tricky is with the high school kids, the high school seniors and juniors who have to commit to some of these colleges, and maybe they thought they had, a chance to start as a freshman, and now maybe they won't because some seniors want to come back. Plus, it's tricky on seniors because some of these seniors have jobs lined up, and so it is a nice gesture, but I think there are some things maybe the NCAA didn't think about, maybe they're missing in terms of the high school kids who are coming into their schools.
That's exactly right, Stugotz, and that was my point on the analogy for the sort of the airline cancellation, that you had athletes that made decisions based upon what they expected the roster to be and what they were promised by coaches. So for your daughter and any other incoming athlete, I believe that they should be allowed to go wherever they want. So if their circumstances have materially changed, they can go somewhere else. And I think that should be allowed. But I can tell you that the schools don't want to do that because they don't want their assets going somewhere else because they're going to allow somebody to come back. It's one of these deals where there are some, I don't even want to call them unintended consequences because they are intended. That's the way they set the system up. And they're making this decision. These are smart people. They know what they're doing. But if they're gonna do this, they have to allow everybody to make a decision when their circumstances have changed materially. Because, and this also points up another issue for me, is that guess who gets to say no? And it's the schools and the coaches. So if a coach doesn't want a senior back, they can say, nope, don't have a spot for you. Now, if they've been extended, if an athlete, like a senior athlete's been extended another year of eligibility, that athlete should be able to go wherever they want if they're not wanted back at their school, yes, or if they're wanted back at a lesser number, lesser scholarship number. And, again, like most of these athletes are paying their own way. Like baseball has 11.7 scholarships for a 40-man roster, something like that. So if a baseball player was getting a scholarship last year, and they've got an incoming freshman they've promised it to, or they don't want to pay for that athlete to come back, then that athlete should be able to go somewhere else if they want to take aid somewhere else.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.